Hi guys, it's James back with another video, and this one is, I had finished it a day or two ago, and then I had started a top 10 disaster films, and I'd had a decent list, I suppose, but then something about the list kind of fell apart, so I cherry-picked one or two films from that list that still qualified for this one and modified this list. So this list is the top 10 dramas part 2, because it turns out I had several more and a few that I had forgotten about that could have been on other lists as well. Anyway, so without further ado, we will start with number 10. Number 10, we have a film from 2012 called Best Man Down. And this one stars primarily Justin Long, Jess Wexler, Tyler Labine, Addison Timlin. You got Shelley Long in there, Frances O'Connor, Evan Jones. But it's mainly about Justin Long and Jess Wexler are getting married. And Justin Long's best friend from school is a guy named Lumpy, played by Tyler Labine, who he hasn't seen for a while. He's kind of like a joker, drinker, kind of screw up in the past. And at the wedding, he's just going all out, drinking, getting drunk, causing trouble. And he ends up getting so wasted that he stumbles outside into, I think they're near the desert, because he stumbles outside and collapses on a cactus and ends up dying. So they're tasked with the responsibility of returning his body home. So what started out as a wedding with a best man turns out to be transporting the dead best man back home. And there are some light moments in the film because Tyler Labine, just being a naturally brilliant comedic actor, as well as Justin Long, but he's mostly playing the straight guy in this. And then you've got Addison Timlin entering into the mix as sort of a girl who lives with her mom and her stepdad, but they've got serious drug problems and stuff, so she wants to get away from them. But she has a connection to Tyler Labine's character. He came upon her at a time when she needed someone, and she ended up spending a lot of time with him, just doing her homework, and in a hotel room that he was using, and they just became great friends. And it's not much of a spoiler. It's just a dramatic reveal, I suppose, that you find out later that there's many things about Lumpy that Justin Long's character, Scott, didn't know about one of his one time close friends. And that at some point, like he was studying to be a lawyer, and then he finds out that he has a terminal illness, a terminal heart problem. And he didn't have very long to live. And so what he did was he decided he didn't want to be a lawyer, he was going to live life how he wanted. And at the same time, he came upon Addison Timlin's character and decided he could help her and be a good friend to her because she really needed one. And the absolute high point of this film is when they get Lumpy's body back to his hometown, back home, and they have the funeral. You get this girl that comes up who nobody has any idea who she is, but who seemed to be the closest to Lumpy prior to his death, and gives just about the most beautiful eulogy you could imagine for someone's funeral. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. It ends up being way more than you think it is. I mean, the trailer kind of has the comedic elements, madcap kind of feel to it, but there's a heavy dramatic sense to it, and Addison Timlin really shines in this one. Because she's been in other ones like That Awkward Moment and Californication, where she's playing like the hot girl. This one, she's kind of disheveled, down on her luck, and really, really shines. Her acting ability really shines in this one. So that is Best Man Down. Number 9, we have a film from 2006 called Right at Your Door. And this is one that I had slotted into the disaster films. It could also be considered a thriller, but I picked it for this one because it does have heavy dramatic elements, as it takes place largely in one house. You have Rory Cochrane and Mary McCormack, Mary McCormack, married couple, and she leaves to go downtown, and there's all of a sudden reports on the news of several dirty bombs that were detonated throughout the city. And so everyone is, the whole city's being quarantined, and people are to stay in their houses and stuff, don't go outside, you could get sick or die. And he's locked in his house, and he ends up letting another guy in who needs help. But he can't get to his wife, can't get a hold of his wife, doesn't know if she's alive or dead. But he can't go outside, and when she finally does come back, he can't let her inside. She does end up getting inside, but he has certain sections of the house cordoned off because he doesn't want anyone getting infected or by the possible radiation or whatever, getting sick. And so a lot of the movie is taking place in this one house, and he can't leave, can't let anyone in, and can't let anyone out. So it's a very claustrophobic movie, very paranoid, but the dramatic elements come in with Rory Cochrane's stellar acting in this one, and how the story turns by what will be the result of the contagion going through the city, and what will be the result of him staying in his house the entire time. Now, this one was written and directed by Chris Gorak. It was his directorial debut. He went on to make one other movie, which was Darkest Hour. That was the one that takes place in Russia with Emil Hirsch, where it's a more well-known movie. It's sort of like it is an alien invasion movie, but I thought it was a little bit higher profile than would fit on this list, even though it didn't get as wide a release as they anticipated, or do as well as they anticipated. But anyway, 2 great movies from this guy, but a very, very impressive debut. So that is Right at Your Door. All right, number 8, we have a film from 2005 called Heights. And this one has a pretty impressive cast. And it all involves like several stories going on at the same time, and I believe it's in New York. Because you've got Glenn Close, Elizabeth Banks, James Marsden, Jesse Bradford, Rufus Wainwright, Eric Bogosian, George Segal, who recently passed away, Andrew Howard, Isabella Rossellini, Matthew Davis from Vampire Diaries, Originals, Legacies, Thomas Lennon, and Jim Parsons. And you've got Elizabeth Banks, who's getting married to James Marsden, but she's having second thoughts. And James Marsden has a sort of secret past with Jesse Bradford's character. They had a previous relationship. So he's married a woman, but he had a previous relationship with a man. And Elizabeth Banks' mom is played by Glenn Close, who's a famous stage actress. And Elizabeth Banks ends up just meeting by random chance at a party Andrew Howard's character. And they form an instant connection. but then he disappears. And so a lot of the movie is her trying to track him down just to see if he's all right and sort of reestablish the connection they had. She's, as I said, she's having second thoughts about her upcoming marriage to James Marsden character. And he's sort of struggling with his previous connection to Jesse Bradford. And you've got other stories going on, but that's largely what it is. It's a, I guess, an indie movie, but a very indie feel to it, very indie look to it, the way it's shot. But a great cast for a smaller movie. So that is Heights. Number 7, we have a film from 2006. This is more of a comedy drama, but it's a favorite. It's a favorite of mine. And it's called The Lather Effect. Now, I've watched the movie a number of times, and I don't really get the title that I can recall, but it's sort of on the eve of. Let me see. Let me get you the cast here. Cast, we have Connie Britton, Sarah Clark from 24, Tate Donovan, Peter Facinelli from the Twilight series, David Herman from Office Space, Caitlin Keats, William Mapother, Ione Skye, Eric Stoltz, Kevin Heffernan, Larry Bishop, Monica Keena, RZA. It's a pretty diverse cast. But you've got Connie Britton, her brother's Peter Facinelli, and then on the eve of her mom selling her mom's house, the house they grew up in, they decide to have a reunion of sorts, get all these high school friends back together for this blowout house party. And the movie opens with them waking up after having a huge party. And the party kind of continues for the next day or two. So you've got Eric Stoltz there, and Peter Facinelli, Connie Britton, Sarah Clark, Tate Donovan, all these friends. It's very much a modern version of The Big Chill. It's just not surrounding the death of a friend. It's the sale of a house. But it's so good. It's got some serious elements to it. It's pretty damn funny. But it's just one of those great friends coming back together for a common purpose and what kind of trouble they can get into. So good. The Lather Effect. Right. Number 6, we have a film from 2007 called Things We Lost in the Fire. This one, another lesser known movie with a great cast. You got Halle Berry, Benicio del Toro, David Duchovny, John Carroll Lynch, Alison Lohman. And Halle Berry's married to David Duchovny, and they're happily married. And then just one day, she hears from the police that her husband has been killed while he was defending a woman who was being beaten by her husband. And she has a child, or children, and she ends up getting paid a visit from Benicio del Toro, who's an old friend of her husband. Now, he's a former heroin addict who needs some help. He's still in recovery, and he needs some help. So she lets him into their home, and he becomes friends with her, friends with her kids, and they sort of help each other. Him with her grief and his grief, and her with his road to recovery. So it's very much about the relationship between those two. Well, those two. I guess it's just the one shot, but those two and her kid. So, Things We Lost in the Fire. Very, very well acted movie. All right, number 5. We have a film from 2008 called Mysteries of Pittsburgh. This one based on a book by the same name by Michael Chabon, I guess. He's the guy who wrote. He's done a lot of writing, but he wrote the novel that this is based on. But he also wrote Wonder Boys, that movie with Michael Douglas. this one stars John Foster, Sienna Miller, Peter Sarsgaard, Mina Suvari, and Nick Nolte. You got John Foster, who's just a struggling guy, deciding what to do with his life after school and stuff. And his dad just happens to be the city's mob boss, played by Nick Nolte, who wants him to do certain things with his life, and he just kind of is rebelling against it. He has a relationship with Mina Suvari, but he ends up breaking that off and running into Sienna Miller, whose boyfriend is played by Peter Sarsgaard. And he stays with them for a while, and they sort of have, well, they don't sort of have, they do end up having this sort of love triangle kind of thing. Living together, playing together, staying together and stuff. And it's very, very much a great acting piece between the three, John Foster, Sienna Miller, and Peter Sarsgaard. Peter Sarsgaard, I would say, is the standout acting in this movie, but they all do a great job. I would be interested to see what this book is like, because they did merge some characters like they do. You get two characters just to save time and space, merge two characters into one and make an amalgamation, which I think, not having read the book, worked well for this movie. But anyway, The Mysteries of Pittsburgh. Number 4, we have a film from 2003 called Northfork. Now this one I had seen the preview several times, and I thought it looked great. It's one that probably could have qualified for my top 10 most beautifully shot films. It's not the best looking film out of those, but it's more of like a beautiful movie in general, because it looks great, the music's great, the acting's great, the flow of the movie is just great. And this one stars, again, Nick Nolte. You've got James Woods, Peter Coyote, Claire Forlani, Clark Gregg, Mark Polish, Kyle MacLachlan, Ben Foster, Daryl Hannah, Anthony Edwards, John Greaves. And it takes place in the 50s, and it's sort of this town of Northfork. They're going to demolish the dam to flood this town, sort of to, what do they say? They're building it. It says they're building a new dam that will flood the valley, and for financial needs or real estate needs or whatever, and they need to evacuate the town. And all these agents are sent in, James Woods being the lead of them, at the head of them, and say, if you fill your quota, we'll give you nice beachfront property. And then the movie's all about the people, the agents trying to get these people out of this town, and the people in the town who refuse to leave. And it's just, again, the flow of this movie is beautiful. And if you watch the trailer, you'll see that, because it continues into the movie that you watch. So that is Northfork. And it's directed by Michael Polish and written by Michael and Mark Polish. Mark Polish appears in the movie, but they're twin guys. And if you've seen the movie The Good Thief, the Neil Jordan film with Nick Nolte, they show up in the movie as twins, like buzzed hair and stuff like that, using British accents. Unmistakable if you've seen the movie. I think they also did the movie Twin Falls, Idaho, which I have not seen, but they've directed a few movies, but they also act. But yeah, so this is one of the ones they've done. All right, number 3, we have a film from 2001. It's a Richard Linklater film called Tape, and this involves only 3 actors in one motel room, really. It's Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, and Robert Sean Leonard. And you've got Ethan Hawke as sort of like the screw-up from high school who still drinks a lot, invites Robert Sean Leonard to the motel room to party and stuff, but he has an ulterior motive. And they get to drinking and talking and stuff like that, and he's sort of steering the conversation in a certain direction to try and get Robert Sean Leonard to talk about something specific in their past. And I won't go further into that, but you've also got Uma Thurman who shows up, but she shows up for a particular reason, and it ties into the thing that Ethan Hawke and Robert Sean Leonard are talking about. And this was one, like, Richard Linklater makes some big movies, makes some small movies. This would be considered a small movie that sort of was sandwiched in between some of the well-known ones he did. But this is a pure acting piece, and it was pure acting piece. It was shot on digital video, and it was sort of before digital video looked as good or better than film. It was still in this looks like a home movie kind of thing, but because 20 years ago. So digital video was still, I don't want to say in its infancy, but it was still fairly new. But again, you don't care because the acting in the movie, the writing is so good. So that is Tape. All right, number 2, we have a film from 2000 called The Prime Gig. And this one stars Vince Vaughn, Julia Ormond, Ed Harris, Rory Cochrane, Stephen Tobolowsky, George Wendt, Romany Malco, and Amber Benson primarily. And you've got Vince Vaughn playing Pendleton Pennywise. Yeah, I know Pennywise. But he's a pretty successful telemarketer, and he gets offered a job by a legendary telemarketer by the name of Kelly Grant, played by Ed Harris, and his assistant, Julia Ormond. And it's selling shares in this recently discovered gold mine. And there's a whole room, like sort of like a boiler room full of cold callers that are trying to call people and sell them shares in this gold mine. And they're all guaranteed a certain amount of money or share in this gold mine by the end of it. But Vince Vaughn's character says that he'll only do it if he gets weekly paychecks. So he's the one guy who does that. And so it's the process of them all competing against each other to sell the most shares and get the most money. And you wonder where Kelly Grant's been all this time. He has a shady past, and what will be the culmination of all these sales? Who will get the money? And it's another one that's a purely an acting piece. You don't see Ed Harris a lot. Julia Ormond, it's mainly Julia Ormond and Vince Vaughn in this movie. Vince Vaughn, who always does a stellar job. And this one I've only been able to find on VHS, and I believe it was directed by a guy named Gregory Mosher, who hasn't done much outside of this. But I really wish he was able to, because this is a great first and last movie, I guess. But yeah, The Prime Gig. Number 1, we have another Vince Vaughn movie. It's 1998, and it's called Return to Paradise. This one stars, as I said, Vince Vaughn, Anne H., Joaquin Phoenix, Vera Farmiga, and Jada Pinkett Smith. And this one is about 3 friends who go to Thailand. Vince Vaughn, Joaquin Phoenix, and I believe it's David Conrad. And they go there, they get some hash or weed and stuff, party for a while, and then Vince Vaughn and character names, you got Lewis, Sheriff, and Tony. So Sheriff and Tony decide it's time to go home. Lewis, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who's like very hardcore activist, decides, I'm going to go to this other place and take up this cause. So the 2 guys go back home, he goes there. Or they go back home and he plans to go there. Well, they get, Anne H. reaches out to Vince Vaughn's character, and she has ulterior motives. They end up entering into a relationship and getting close, and then she kind of drops the bomb on him. I'm actually the sister of Lewis, and he has been apprehended by police. They found drugs and stuff in the hotel room you guys were in, and he's in prison, and he's going to be executed. And so the only way you can stop him from being executed is if you and your friend come back and serve time in prison with him, and then you'll all be set free. So they have to make a decision. Does he trust this woman who just lied to him all this time and go back there and serve prison, which he doesn't think he needs to do? He tries to convince his friend. They end up going back there, but his other friend bails. And so it's a question of, does he serve time with him, and can he get his friend, Joaquin Phoenix, out of this mess? So it is a pretty brilliant one. It's another one that I've only been able to find on VHS. I don't believe I have the DVD or have seen it anywhere. But it is another great acting piece by Vince Vaughn and Joaquin Phoenix, because you find out that because when he talks to him on the phone, he has a very strange way of speaking. All of a sudden, he doesn't seem like the guy he knows. And Anne Heche tells him, like, it's not a thing. That's how he's always been. And that was sort of led to her dropping the bomb, saying, like, he's my brother. This is how he's always been. So, yeah, I'll stop there. But apparently it's a remake, but I had never heard of the original film before now. Okay, so that was all for Top 10 Dramas Part 2. I hope you liked it as much as Top 10 Dramas Part 1 if you watched that one. If not, please do. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Toodles.